Episode 3 of It Welcome to Derry, we finally get a Pennywise appearance. Well, sort of. Let's talk about it. Hey, great to have you here. So as mentioned, today we'll be discussing the third episode of It Welcome to Derry. I'll give the general premise, some pros and cons, and then a rating of either negative, neutral, or positive. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel for more similar content in the future. So the episode opens up with a pretty lengthy flashback section of what we come to find out is General Shaw as a boy. He quickly builds a relationship with a local girl named Rose, and one day he runs out into the forest and encounters this terrifying older skeleton man. And as he runs away and is trying to escape this monster, Rose shows up and hits it with a slingshot, which comes into play later on, but they ultimately escape. We then cut back to present time, where Lily is leaving this mental hospital, and Hank Grogan is still being held in jail after being the scapegoat for killing the kids in episode 1. Hank's daughter Ronnie continues to get bullied as she's trying to prove her father's innocence. Then with the adult storyline, General Shaw summons Dick Halloran to locate the weapon alongside Leroy Hanlon and his buddy Paulie. And here's where we have Halloran use that slingshot early on in the episode to help locate Pennywise, but this unfortunately leads to Pennywise seeing Halloran, now potentially putting him in danger. Halloran even almost jumps off the aircraft until Leroy stops him. There's some more flashback development also with Shaw and Rose, and then also now seeing each other as adults. And that love story between Shaw and Rose was pretty great, and in some ways a comparison to a couple of the kids now potentially going through the same kind of thing. We also have a scene where Leroy and Halloran are eating dinner together at Leroy's home and further building out their relationship. We then get the first big meetup of our team of 4 kids with Lily, Ronnie, Rich, and Will. Rich conveniently talks about being able to do some kind of ritual at the cemetery where he can summon the dead, so the kids can ultimately take a picture of Pennywise to vindicate Ronnie's father. But it turns out Rich really has no idea what he's doing, but as the kids are leaving the cemetery, sure enough, they do start encountering some evil spirits and take pictures of them. The episode then wraps up with them breaking into the high school and developing those photos, seeing Pennywise the clown for the first time in one of the pictures. So now looking at some pros and cons for the episode, starting off with the pros. So my first pro here is the continued creativity used for the monster design and the subsequent building of tension when characters encounter these evils. Like in the beginning, we have this Wendigo looking older man crawling all over the place, and then we finally also get introduced to Pennywise, or at least teased with it, when Halloran sees the floating bodies, and then these kids look at the pictures from the camera at the end. My second pro for this episode is the effective continuation of building out this world. I'm not typically a fan of period pieces, but things like seeing the kids at the diner, or the interactions characters like Hank or Halloran have with others, make you truly feel like you're living in the 60s. And then my third and final pro for this episode is the fun dynamic between Leroy and Halloran. When they're outside after dinner, they play off of each other extremely well, as we learn more about Halloran's powers and Leroy's character. Now looking at a few of the cons I have for this episode, my first one is how CGI reliant this episode was with some of the monsters. One being with that opening skeleton old man, and then at the end with the cemetery stuff with the statue and flying ghosts. I like the idea there, but the execution with this non-practical visuals did take me kind of out of the story a little bit. And then my second con that I'll point out, I'm still for the most part waiting for these kids to grow on me. Specifically, we have this group of 4 that is now formed. In the recent It movies, I much prefer the kids to the adults, but with this show so far, I much prefer the adults to the kids. And even if we're looking at kids for this episode, I probably preferred the younger versions of Shaw and Rose instead of our 4 kids. And then my third and final con here is some inconsistencies or conveniences with the writing. For example, we have Lily, who's sent to this mental hospital, but then afterwards, it's just free to roam around at all hours of the night. I know back then there was more freedom with kids just running around all over the place, but you would think that if her mom was truly wanting her to avoid more incidents, she would be keeping Lily at home. And really none of the 4 kids have adults that seem to really care about what they're up to. And then on top of that, in that goofy ending with the 4 kids being chased by pretty lame looking ghosts, they each conveniently drop and re-grab the camera off the ground. Then the other inconsistency that I'll point out is with the precedent set in episode 1, they wanted to pitch the show's stakes as being anybody can be killed off, but then now our main cast feel pretty safe. So it seems like that intro episode was purely for upfront shock value. And now for an overall rating here, episode 3 of It Welcome to Derry gets a positive rating. Yes, the special effects were a bit hit or miss for me, and I'm still warming up to some of the cast, but the story has been intriguing and really pulling me in. I'm also curious if we'll still continue to get at least one new monster per episode, or once Pennywise is revealed, will he just mostly highlight him? Even though I love Pennywise and Bill Skarsgård's version of him, I'd love to keep seeing new monsters get introduced. But those are just some of my thoughts. What did you think? What parts did you like or dislike? And what are your thoughts on the direction with this story? Share all your thoughts on this show and the It universe as a whole down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.